The Washington Wizards made the decision to re-sign Kyle Kuzma last week. It happened on the first day of free agency. 4 years, $102 million. That is very similar to like the John Collins contract, which is the one that I was told mid-year to watch out for. Like, it's going to be something similar to that. So ultimately, what would have happened in terms of Kuzma specifically and the value that he had if the old regime had stayed, I don't think is that much different than what ultimately happened. And that does not change, I think, the defining decision of the Tommy Shepard era in terms of the 2023 decisions of not moving Kuzma at the trade deadline, something that perhaps will be revisited later in the show in terms of the biggest memories, certainly the most requested memory of our first year of doing this was the exchange I had with Shepard at the trade deadline after deciding not to move Kuzma. The idea that that was preposterous. Ultimately, though, it pays off in that they don't lose him for nothing. And so here's where I sit on the Kuzma thing. He's a very, very good basketball player. He actually had a positive defensive win shares last year, which I found surprising. But he's a fine defender. He's long, he rebounds, but he's not good on that end. He's fine, and he knows how to play within obviously a championship level scheme when surrounded by excellent defenders. He's not going to prevent you from winning at the highest levels because, well, he won there as an even younger player with Davis and LeBron. With Kuz offensively, hit his best. Is he scoring 20 points per game in terms of like where his best usage is? Probably not. You probably have him as like an 18 point per game scorer, but there's incredible value in a guy who's an 18 points per game and 8 rebound per game kind of guy. That's what he is in his best role. Next year, he'll probably average 20 to 23 points a game because he's going to get the shots on a team that doesn't have anyone besides Jordan Poole to take them. Obviously, Kispert and some other guys will get their looks, but in terms of primary ball handler, guys you run offense through and for, Poole is the obvious one, Kuzma is the obvious two, and then it's probably, honestly, Kispert as the third guy who has kind of this J.J. Redick-y type of role where you run him off of screens, and a lot of your offense is designed for him, kind of, but it's also designed to use him to open up other things because his incredibly high shooting percentages garners a lot of attention. So the thing is, in the NBA, asset management is key. You do not want to lose players for nothing. And the value of that is very limited because rarely does it actually translate into full cap space because re-signing your own guys allows you to go over the cap. So, you know, if you don't spend that $24 million on Kuzma, let's say, depending on what year of the contract it is, 24, 25, 26, I have to look at how the numbers are actually prorated year over year. But whatever the number is in any given year doesn't mean that's automatically 24, 25, 26 million that goes to someone else. And so if you keep that in mind, and the fact that you're paying market value for this guy, it's a great contract because you can trade him again. I do not think realistically at late 20s, in the middle of his prime, Kyle Kuzma's timeline for being his best on a championship team lines up with when the Wizards are hoping to win a championship. Obviously, you hope to win one this year. Realistically, you're looking 5, 6, 7 years down the line when Bilal Coulibaly and when whoever is the high school kid that they're going to draft in 2 years get to the league, enter their prime, start doing their thing. When you have the ability to make whatever moves you need to acquire a superstar via trade, and all of a sudden you're in go for it mode. That's down the line. But what you've done right now is maintain a status quo of assets that allows you to make a move so that Kuz hopefully can get to a team that can use him in his best role on a championship team, and Kyle can go get into the ring. In the meantime, he can continue the amazing stuff that he started in D.C., community work, building a life. If this is where he wants to be long-term after basketball, like I think he's built himself a heck of a reputation here. And he can obviously be in a role that he enjoys. Kyle Kuzma likes having the basketball. Kyle Kuzma likes scoring 20 points a game. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially for a guy that already has a ring. And so if Kyle wants to be able to experiment and figure out, okay, I want to see just how good I can be in a role that's probably too big for me, but maybe we learn that it's not. Maybe he, in year 2 of having this much responsibility, becomes more efficient, and you learn he can be the third or second best player on a championship team. And now all of a sudden you've got Kuzma and Poole, and it's like, well, shoot. how do we get the best guy? And whether it's, did you hit the Giannis home run in Koulibaly, or you go acquire someone, the lanes are very open here. I think where Wizards fans get themselves in a bit of a tizzy unnecessarily is what this means for 2023. And I talked about this last week. I did a segment on last Monday, a week ago, the one show that we did last week, asking how much does it matter, or does it matter how much the Wizards win in 2023, right? This idea that, do you want to do the middle build? Do you want to build from the bottom? Do you have to fully tank? Can you stay in the middle? Are they still on the hamster wheel? And it's a complicated question. But I think that two things can be true at once. You can finish in the middle and not be on the hamster wheel. And I think that's what the Wizards are going to do. And also then, if you finish in the middle, what does that mean? So let's flesh out the middle part first, and then we'll get to the hamster wheel. It matters to be bad when the draft is good. And I will say, this is a sentiment that's been going around on Twitter, I think, a little bit, that I think is worth entertaining. There hasn't been a lot of success recently at the top of the draft. And a lot of the players, even the ones that just signed, yes, Anthony Edwards, former number 1 overall pick, gets his rookie max extension, designated player extension, the 5 for $260. But so did Tyrese Halliburton. And Halliburton was an 11th pick. Domantas Sabonis was late single digits, early. He might have even been 12 or 15. He was somewhere between 8 and 15. Right? Obviously, Jokic just wins the title as a second rounder. He's an anomaly, but he exists. Gobert, second rounder, got traded for a bunch of stuff last year, is largely been an excellent player. Donovan Mitchell wasn't the first overall pick. You think of the best younger players in the league, and yeah, there's, Ja obviously comes with a whole set of circumstances right now, but is widely considered the cream of the crop in terms of that age group. Outside of that stuff, he was a second overall pick. Zion in the very limited action has been awesome, but the guys who have been consistent and reliable and excellent and worthy of these contracts have been far more sporadically placed in the draft than historically speaking, where if you're not picking in the top 5, you're kind of screwed. And I don't know exactly what to ascribe that to, but I do know that top, middle, whatever, next year's draft isn't considered very good. And so being at the top of the wrong draft is actually a huge responsibility, or hugely responsible for some of the Wizards' problems in their history. If they were embarking on this plan last year, I would say, yes, you need to be at the very top of the draft, because Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson, these guys that are thought to be generational, are going to be coming out, and you need to be as high in that as possible. And even other players who might be tops in other years are going to get pushed down because you have such elite high-end talent. Next year, there's not that. The most interesting thing going into the draft next year is how high can Bronny James get, because LeBron's going to want to go play to wherever that team is. And so in a year where being bad is not as valuable as it is in other years, what's the point? I think the best thing to do is kind of fatten up your assets. You get a Jordan Poole in here. Even if it's 1 year and out, if he averages 27 a game, his value's higher. You're going to get more in return. Same thing for Kuzma. The value is being able to acquire future picks and or other talent, not necessarily being at the top of the next draft. That doesn't mean you don't need to draft well. And it certainly doesn't mean that you can't, or that you can get by with poor player development, which has been, to me, the biggest single bugaboo of this organization, and something that the places where Dawkins and Winger come from have been excellent at. But it does mean that finishing in the middle next year is not nearly as damaging as it would have been, for instance, with what the Wizards did this year, although it might have worked out because Koulibaly has an extraordinarily high ceiling, and we'll see. As for the hamster wheel side of it, the hamster wheel comes with being trapped. The hamster, finishing in the middle does not mean that you are on the hamster wheel and you can't ever get off. It might just mean you are in waiting for the piece that will get you to the next level, get you off the wheel and catapult you out of it towards the top of the league. And that's where the Wizards are now. Poole is tradable. Kuzma's tradable. Kispert is tradable. Like, every single piece they have has value that I would say you could probably get something good in return back for. I'm still surprised DeLon Wright is here. I think there's a great chance that if a contender would want to give up a first, like the Wizards in the Ernie era used to give up first-round picks for players like Corey Kispert all the time because they were trying to hunt and pick and find that final thing. And if all of a sudden, the Warriors want to give you a future first at the trade deadline for Corey Kispert because they need another shooter, okay, like, I'm not trying to punt Corey out of town. I would hang on to Corey Kispert unless I got a, good first-round pick in return because I think he is a really good player who is dramatically getting better and is a phenomenal culture guy. He fits the new culture better than he fit the old culture. He's part of the reason that there is a new culture. Corey Kispert, super valuable. But that's kind of the point. Corey Kispert's a guy who could be super valuable. And you just have to ensure that you're always keeping, as a fan, the timeline in mind. What is the ultimate goal? To win a championship. When is that supposed to happen? 3 to 7 years down the line. And so worrying too much about results now, either way, up or down, is a waste of energy. And it's why I think managing the assets, bringing back Kuz, not losing him for nothing, getting a guy like Poole who is either going to be a part of your future or can be flipped for a part of your future is essential. And while I understand why people are like, oh, wait, I thought they were trying to be terrible. I thought they were tearing it down. Oh, my God, they're going to win too many games. It's why I think it's kind of a waste of energy. You don't need to worry about not being on the hamster wheel. You're off the hamster wheel. Enjoy what is going to be a pretty fun basketball team that's going to, at nights, score a ton of points, is going to get up and down. And by the way, we're also going to learn how good of a defensive coach Wes Unseld is, because if he gets these guys to play anything remotely approaching top half of the league defense, that will be a miracle based off their personnel. They don't have a rim protector, and they don't particularly have any exceptional perimeter defenders. Doesn't matter. They're not trying to win a championship this year. But what they do have is assets that can be useful to other teams or to them perhaps later if the timeline speeds up. And we'll see where they go from there.
This is The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.